This is an Envoice Media podcast.
The task is to understand what you're selling.
You need to be able to articulate what kind of emotions, right, you want to actually communicate in your advertising or your brand or your message.
People who are like marketers or creative design professionals, your ability to communicate to clients and making them understand, the burden is always on you.
They exist for you to kind of know the guidelines, but it's up to you how to use them, how to break them, how to manipulate them.
You're listening to Manipulation Games Psychology and Marketing Podcast with your hosts, Gene and Darren.
Welcome to Manipulation Games Psychology and Marketing Podcast. I'm Darren with our marketing genius, Gene, and we're with a special guest today.
Hello. Hi, guys.
This is Maryna. Introduce yourself.
Hi, I'm Maryna. I'm a photographer, videographer. Also, I'm a host of Just Fake It podcast.
That's right.
By Invoice
Cross-promotion.
Media, cross promotion. And Gene and Darren invited me today, guys, to talk about some cameras, some geeky stuff.
Awesome. But before we begin, I love to recap kind of like our previous episode because just looking back, just watching our last episode, it was all about eye language, right? Like communicating with your eyes. And I thought it was really fascinating. And I think the biggest takeaway I got from that was basically the Duchenne smile, as you mentioned, right? It's like if you're a marketer and you have ads out there where someone is smiling, just look for their crow's feet on your eyes. If you don't have any crow's feet in your eyes, it's not genuine. And people can pick up on that and realize, hey, you're being fake and phony, right?
Yeah.
But it's such a simple thing. It's such a simple check, but your eyes communicate so much. And we read it all the time.
Yeah, the whites of our eyes are the primary way that we can sort of tell people's emotions. And that's kind of something that's developed over evolution. The fact that people can see where your eyes are pointing.
Yeah.
And we were able to cooperate better by being able to see the whites of the eyes of our compatriots as we teamed up and tried to cooperate on difficult tasks, particularly like hunting back in the day. So
yeah, and I did some extra research after the fact, and some dogs, and only certain particular dogs, do show the whites of their eyes, but they're hunting dogs.
interesting.
Yes.
That makes a lot of sense.
So they've been bred because they need to point out things to the hunters. So there's certain dogs where, you can barely see the whites of their eyes, but they've probably been bred that way.
Interesting.
Isn't that crazy?
So the whites of our eyes.
Yeah.
It's hunting.
Yeah. Anyways, today we're going to talk about something similar in the vein of body language. So
Close.
can you discuss what we're going to talk about today?
Sure, absolutely. So today I kind of prepared to talk to you about body language and camera work in the advertising and in marketing world, right? Because again, we use as a visual people, we use a lot of techniques, a lot of little secrets to manipulate the viewer, to make them feel what they did not expect to feel, to make them see what they're like not necessarily know what it is, right? And also working on a subconscious level of translating that energy and message and selling things.
See, you said the secret word, secret. The secrets. I love that word.
And
yeah.
and I think just because like now we've sort of had like this is our third kind of body language focused episode, but I think this one's probably going to be in some ways the most important one because in the previous episodes we talked a lot about how manipulation functions and how body language functions in interpersonal communication.
Yeah.
Right. But the stuff that you'd put to photos and videos is the stuff that goes out to millions of people. Right. In marketing, we talk about impressions, getting a certain amount of impressions, getting a certain amount of eyeballs. And so, there's a lot of stuff that you can do in body language in your interpersonal situation. But the stuff that happens with the camera work and the posing, it gets multiplied times thousands and thousands of times to get in front of a lot of people.
Oh,
Absolutely. And it's also different because in a real world, right, you have your language, you have your like eyes, you have your smell, you have your like body position. In a picture world, right, it's a two-dimensional basically object, right? And you don't have all that extra things to support your body language, right? So you only have positioning of your body and the look. Nothing else. Like we can't hear your voice, we can't hear your smell, we can see how tall or like, how low you are. It's all about how the photographer positions the object in the frame.
It's flat. Yeah.
right?
Yeah,
It is
yeah.
flat.
Not 3-dimensional slide
Right,
hack.
right.
It seems obvious,
Yeah.
but now
Yeah.
that I think about it.
Yeah.
So anyway, body language in photography, there is no right or wrong. Again, there is no. It depends. What are you trying to sell, right? So, let's say, it can be more powerful. It can be less powerful. It can be more masculine. It can be less masculine. It can be feminine, right? But it's no right or wrong because, like, again, you can have a man in a frame, but you're trying to, I don't know, sell like men's skincare, right? So you want him a little bit more or less masculine, a little bit more feminine. So there's a lot of these tricks that you can use and do in a photography. And again, the task is to understand what you're selling, right? So because we can sell a person, right? Because there's a lot of like personal shoots, right? And person is selling himself or herself, right? In this case, we're trying to make sure they look the best, like the best that they
So, like,
can.
an example, like a real estate agent or a lawyer.
Yeah.
Or, some sort of business consultant.
Yeah. He's kind of selling his, his services, but in the real life, he's selling himself, right? Kind of thing. But at the same time, sometimes we want to sell a skincare, right? Or, I don't know, hair product or, I don't know, something else. So it's not about the person anymore. It's about the product. So you have to figure out what are you selling. And on this, the body language and everything else depends. If it makes sense.
Okay, so so you basically you're trying to control the focal point, like the main like center. Like sometimes you're selling a person, but sometimes you have an ad. Like I remember David Ogilvy always hated putting celebrities into ads.
Okay.
Because it drew attention away from the product.
Yeah, because like people
And
remember
so-
celebrities, not the
Ooh.
product.
People remember the celebrity, but they never remember the product. So he had a hard rule of like he hated celebrity endorsements. So
Okay.
because the attention would go to the person, not the
Again,
product.
depends what you're selling.
Yeah.
And you have to, so basically you have to figure out the first thing you do, you're going to shoot and you need to know what are we selling? Are we selling a person? Are we selling a product? Are we selling a piece of clothing? Whatever, right? This is going to be our focus. And on that depends how we're going to position a model or an object in a frame, right? And basically if we start working with people, again, I know you guys talked a little bit about fake smile or real smile, right?
Yeah.
So also in the photography or videography, it really translates the inner state of a model, even through the pictures. So my job as a photographer or director or whatever, I need to bring real emotions out of the person because otherwise it's going to be readable that it's fake. The fake smile, the fake. So me, for example, always on a set, I'm trying to talk to a person. I'm trying to get to know them, to like make them laugh, but naturally, or depending on a message, or you need to make somebody sad. So you need to make them actually feel that, right? Because what if you like, selling some medicine and you need a sad person in frame,
Yeah.
It's like, but you can't fake just being sad. You need like it needs to be real in terms of like to sell something. People need to feel that it's real, it's relatable.
In our studio, Darren is oftentimes like the person who sort of takes on that task with the other podcast hosts of like, he does a really good job of trying to make them comfortable.
Okay.
Again, because so they could be fully expressive
Yeah.
and like kind of get them out of their shell sometimes or get them
Yeah,
into the
yeah.
right mood.
Yeah.
Because, you have to get into the
We
mood to
should've-
be
No,
like
yeah.
talkative.
We should have probably done something before the show. Just been like, hey,
That's
let's
a
like,
good-
Yeah.
well, we did actually sing an ABBA song together.
Yeah, we did.
Just,
About
sang
money.
that got us kind of in the mood. We're gonna, get our spirits
Yeah.
up. Yeah, yeah.
So what do you have some sort of like your own personal techniques or rituals that you do when you are trying to get the best emotion out of?
Well, it depends. Again, it depends on photo or video work, right? But I always play music, always on set. If I don't record sound, there's always music. And I'm always trying to ask people who are in frame, like, oh, what do you like? What is like, what feels you more, makes you feel more relaxed, makes you feel like cool. And then I'm trying to kind of dance and vibe with them.
Yeah.
And obviously I'm trying to help be there. Like, for example, I did this shoot recently where my actors, they had to be very silly in a frame, right? And for some people, it's hard to relax and be silly. So I have to go in there and I stand next to them and be as silly as I can. Like, because like they get into that mood.
Yeah.
So I can get the most out of them.
Yeah,
if it makes sense.
because again, body language is a form of communication, and
Yeah.
you can't just get somebody in the mood. You have to physically communicate that as well, whether
Yeah.
through your facial expressions or even your body language. And that's something that we learned.
Yeah.
in our
Ideally,
previous
everything
podcast.
together, right?
Yeah, absolutely.
It also connects to that idea of mirror neurons, of where we sort of borrow
Yes.
emotions and body language from people.
Yes.
So by you actually getting in there and showing them kind of body language,
Yeah.
right? They can sort of like mimic it and take it on when they're not feeling comfortable. Though I've heard that like actors, generally speaking, don't like when directors do that in like fully professional
It
settings.
depends. Again, everybody has their own thing, right? And actually, one of my most interesting experiences was I used to work with kids a lot, right? And like I had to shoot and direct kids, and this was the hardest job I ever had because kids, they can't pretend. You know, it's hard for them to pretend.
Yeah.
So they have to, for real, feel whatever you want them to feel. They have to like pose. So you have to like jump around, I don't know, make fun, but also take pictures at the same time or videos. Like, you know, it's a very hard job, but it was interesting and it was very challenging
Wow.
to do.
Yeah.
So that was kind of cool. But again, I wanted to talk to you guys about some tricks and things that you can do in the pictures or videos to kind of like manipulate the viewer, right?
Okay.
So one of the first things I want to talk about again is kind of having a power in a frame. So let's say you want somebody to show power, right, from the picture, subconsciously. No text, no context, nothing. You just want to see power, right? So from body positioning and language, when you face straight to the camera, this is the biggest power you have. So you straight to the camera, your shoulders are straight, you take a lot of space. So this translates a lot of power subconsciously to the person who is looking at the picture. And the more you start tilting your body, so the less space you take, the less powerful you are. But this is also very optional because, again, for example, if the girl is kind of trying to be flirty, right? She would rather like look at you over her shoulder, right? And be a little bit less powerful, so to let you be more powerful. So you kind of can use these little tricks also to manipulate, right, the viewer. So again, you're trying to sell, I don't know, give me an example. What are we trying to sell?
Men's cologne.
Men's cologne, right? Probably you want to be pretty powerful, right?
Right.
So you're straightforward, your shoulders are super wide, you take as much space as you can. You translate power, sorry. Otherwise, if you're trying to sell, I don't know, something more,
Women's feminine hygiene products.
Yeah, probably you a little bit more vulnerable, right? A little bit
More playful.
like, more playful
To the side, kind of angled, like looking like this.
You're angling your
Right.
body, so you're playing with the positioning of the person. But at the same time, let's say if we have a group shot, which is interesting psychologically, I noticed, and I know it's a thing. People usually subconsciously, when there's a group of people and you're telling them like to, you know, tilt your body, they would face somebody they feel more comfortable with, or they would like turn from the person who they like not feel the contact that much.
Okay.
Right? So you also, as a photographer, as person in the frame, you have to be sure to translate that kind of idea is like people feel comfortable or people are confronting each other. Like good example, for example, Mr. and Mrs. Smith cover. I don't know if you guys saw they like facing each other with their backs and
Yeah,
the
okay.
guns, right?
Yeah.
So it means they have a confrontation subconsciously. So
Okay,
that's
so
kind of
they're against each other. And
Yeah.
Okay.
So they're not facing each other, they're facing back. And again, the more people you have, right, you kind of trying to, you know, like there is like huge posters of like, I don't know, let's think about
Like
like
ensemble
Marvel
casts?
movie or something.
Yeah, ensemble casts. Like
Yeah.
Game
So you
of
kind
Thrones.
of can read, by
Yeah.
the body language, you can read what is the relationship between different people, which is interesting. Again, playing the subconscious games with the viewer is, I think it's kind of cool.
So basically, you're saying
Yeah.
the way you can just positioning people.
Yeah.
Like, you can imagine you have like 4 group of people, and you can position them. It would be a good exercise. Just rotate them
Yeah.
in certain directions, and you could communicate literally like rotating people's bodies.
Yeah.
That's kind of cool.
absolutely.
yeah. So and that lines up a lot with what we were talking about threat level, right?
Okay.
In the sense of like the most threatening kind of thing,
Yeah.
like when you have like 2 like boxers squaring off, is like they're standing square to
Yeah.
each other.
Yeah.
And then the majority of the time when we're having normal interaction, we're not trying to be fully square on each other. We're a little bit tilted,
yeah.
away. So in images, this is also basically
Absolutely.
kind of an
Yeah, but
effect.
in images, it's cool because you can manipulate it, right? You can position a person, even though this person is not, it might be not that powerful, right? You position and you frame them in a way that you show a lot of power, you show a lot of like respect, I don't know, scare or something, right?
Yeah.
Another interesting thing, I'm sure you guys talked about it on a previous body language positioning, right? Crossing legs, crossing arms, kind of being closed, right? It's interesting because generally, yes, it's considered when you cross your arms, you're kind of like closed, you're not sure. But what is interesting, when you're photographing or filming men, crossing your arms can also like make your biceps look bigger.
Oh, okay.
If you think about it, right?
Okay.
So again, the idea is, what are we trying to sell? Are we trying to sell a man with nice biceps? Then it's okay to cross your arms. Like, it's cool. It's a good position. His arms look bigger. He looks like great. Position his chin. Or if you're trying to sell a person as being nice and open, of course, it's not going to work. So again, it really depends on what are you trying to do.
If you gave the crossed arm position to a female model, what do you think that would say?
It depends. Again, it depends how you position them. I know basically it's considered a lot of business portraits made in that way. So you're trying to be more masculine a little bit to translate the power a little more. But generally, it's a not good position for women. So, let's say if you're trying to sell yourself as a woman, as your like Instagram pictures,
Like a fashion model type thing?
You would never see a girl crossing her arms. But if it's somebody, a CEO in a suit, like being super professional and nice, or a doctor kind of idea. But again, subconsciously, you're trying to be more masculine, more powerful than just than just regular.
Yeah, I mean, I see that though. I see a lot of women crossing their arms in like TV shows and posters but that they want to communicate that like level of authority. I feel like,
Yeah.
Like
hey,
a
look at
doctor
me,
or
I'm a
something,
woman,
right?
but I have a level of authority. you
Yeah.
know? But it's like such a simple thing, but you're communicating again with your body.
Yeah.
Like whatever show that you're trying to promote, right?
No, absolutely. And again, speaking about female and male, right? Energy and kind of masculinity and femininity. Again, there's different positions and shapes you can take to be either more masculine, powerful, or more feminine, like light. One thing that I like is generally considered masculine is vertical lines and feminine are horizontal lines.
Oh, that's strange.
So like the more straight you are, the more masculine and powerful you're translating your energy, and more horizontal you become. So even like, I'm not saying about laying, right? Like a model's laying, but even like if you tilt your head a little more, if you like create a shape more horizontal with like your arm, right? That makes it more feminine already. So like,
I see.
Okay, so on average, the kind of the longer the body position is versus the wider it is.
yes, it's more powerful, more masculine. And again, I'm not saying it's only for men and this is only for women. Depends. What are you trying to say? What are you trying to do? What are you selling? Right?
Yeah, I'm like thinking about that Burt Reynolds centerfold for
When he's like this?
the Playgirl magazine.
Kind of like this, laying on one.
Well, it was a big deal, whereas he went naked for, I think it was Playgirl magazine way back in the day.
Okay.
You
That's
know?
right. He's very masculine. He has those hairy chest.
he's hairy chest. He's lying, but he's lying on, I think, like a bear pelt or something. It's a classic photo because again, he took a risk. It was the first time.
Yeah.
That's a great example.
Somebody did
because
great,
it's
yeah,
like because when you think of that, it's become almost like a joke now, right? Because of the contradiction. You have a very masculine man in a very feminine pose.
Yeah,
right.
He was taking this risk. He was kind of pioneering that by like, Burt Reynolds was such a masculine like figure.
Yeah.
That he's like, screw it, I'll be a centerfold.
No, but it also works because subconsciously, again, our brain, right, kind of receives the information that this is masculine, this is feminine, and then something is not working. You see this picture, and something in your brain is like,
what in the world?
Something's not working.
Yeah, that's so strange.
why-
It defies expectation.
Yeah, exactly. It's very interesting. It works with your brain, and that makes you, or as a viewer, somebody who are trying to sell something, pay attention to that
Slow
because like
down.
something's not aligning.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Very, very. Yeah, and that's a really good one. Never thought about it. Now I'm gonna remember that one. I'm gonna use
That's
that.
interesting. Yeah. Or like, like they do a lot of this power kind of photo shoots with models. Now it's more popular, but like when a model would like put a leg on a table and like be like super like, wearing a suit, but still staying feminine at the same time. So it's interesting, like power games. And again, now the feminism is growing and like all the, like, women support women. So women are trying to be bigger using these techniques of body positioning, body language, kind of all that stuff.
Again, it's just like it's a trend, but that's you've seen that more now than
Yeah.
say in like the 70s, right?
Yeah,
you see women
absolutely.
like putting their leg or their thing like kind of standing to the side wearing, a business outfit or suit.
sharper angles.
Yeah,
like
sharp angles
on the lapels and
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Very
Yeah.
cool.
Speaking about angles, right? The triangle is also kind of considered being more masculine. So like if you take the shapes of triangle, square is kind of more masculine, while feminine is more wavy, curvy, interesting shapes. Like, I don't know, creating shapes with your body. Again, males, they usually don't do that. It's more masculine to do that. It's very interesting, and I use these techniques a lot in my work as well, right? When I'm trying to like do some interesting photo shoots, and it works specifically when you're trying to break the rules, right? So these rules, they exist so you can break them and then bring attention to your work or to the person or to the product.
because you are probably already intuitively would do these things automatically.
Yeah.
But being aware that you're doing them might allow you to break them if you're trying to create something different.
Yeah.
Like to break out of that mold.
Yeah.
So you're saying like feminine is basically if you have some sort of like curve type things, while masculine energy tends to be a bit more like
triangles,
geometric.
geometrical shapes. Yeah,
Okay.
absolutely. Also, another interesting trick I learned from a male portrait. For example, when you're taking a picture of a male, right? Again, you can make him a little bit more masculine or a little more feminine. Depends. And again, feminine doesn't mean he looks like a woman. It just makes him look a little more soft, a little more open. I don't know, not that strong and scary, right? So there's this trick. So if you're facing your shoulder towards the camera, right? One of your shoulders. Okay. So if you tilt your head towards this shoulder, you are more feminine. If you tilt your head away from this shoulder, this is a more masculine.
Oh,
position.
so away and like
no,
this?
one shoulder. So you have one shoulder. If you tilt your head here towards the shoulder, you're more feminine. If you tilt your head other way, away from the shoulder, away from the camera, this
This
makes
is very
Interesting.
simple. Like more like hey, more playful and more like hey.
So
Yeah,
the
more-
relationship
Afraid.
to the front shoulder.
to the front shoulder, to the camera. It kind of it plays with your look. So like if you tilt it here, again, your look kind of goes from under a little bit your eyes, and then if you go here, you're kind of looking from up, down a little bit. Just a tiny bit. It's a tiny little tweaks, but
Yeah.
they play again with subconscious and
And then Darren and I were talking about, I think last time, about how a lot of times the tilted head is almost a universal sign of being playful.
okay.
Or
like this.
Or like, are you ready
Playful.
to play with me?
Yeah.
Like, or like,
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
some, and potentially, I guess maybe like by being farther away, it's like almost a challenge.
It's almost
It's
like
still playful,
hey,
but
yeah.
like, but it's a challenging.
You're challenging
Yeah.
your opponent.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Like,
absolutely.
hey, come at me. Like,
Yeah.
Yeah.
Again, when you have more than two people in frame, right, you also position them in a way of like their power between each other. So it's interesting. You can play with it. Again, speaking about boys, girls, kind of feminine, masculine, there's also symmetry is a very important thing, because symmetry, again, usually kind of more masculine a little bit. And then something asymmetrical, again, the shapes, curves, and everything, it's more feminine. So like men are usually posing like this, right? You have this perfect symmetric shapes, or like this, even like this, right? It's still kind of symmetric, triangle, square. And females, they're more like, oh, this like here, this like there, like, you know, like forward. So you create more unsymmetrical but more interesting shapes
So
with your body.
when you're trying to potentially build some of these more asymmetrical, like curvy shapes, how do you start? How do you like? Is there like maybe like a little tip or a rule? Because essentially you're trying to be creative.
Yeah.
But like, do you start with the feet? Do you start with the shoulders? What's like a way for somebody to try to explore and maybe find a new pose that they haven't tried before?
That's interesting. Again, it depends what are you working with, right? Who are you working with? What are you trying to sell or to do?
So
right?
let's do women's lingerie.
Women's lingerie. Okay,
Yeah.
so you need curves, right? So you look at the model and you're trying to figure out what is the best thing about her that sells, right? Is it her belly? Is it her long legs? Is it her like nice shoulder line? Like you're figuring out what is working there, right? And then you start probably from there. So as a photographer, you see, oh, I really like her, like, I don't know, like a jawline, right? Even though it has nothing to do with lingerie, right? But you're probably trying to incorporate it and make it like more visible, more sexy, more, you know, and then everything else kind of starts adjusting and you can see how it's working. So you start with this little detail that I think you like the most or you think your viewer would like the most, right? And then you work gradually from there.
Yeah, I think just knowing what is masculine, like a lingerie photo shoot, you would not have the model just like this or like this, right?
Yeah,
You would have her
absolutely.
more to the side, and again, more
Yeah.
playful, or maybe like, tilting their head
Yeah.
or to the side and just kind of accentuating the
Yeah.
feminine aspects or poses.
Or again, as a creative people who live in 21st century, right, will like to like break the rules, right? So right now, I'm pretty sure we can see some models just sitting in a chair like this in a lingerie, you know?
Right.
And it brings your attention,
Right.
I don't know if it's like sells or not again, but depends. Like, do you like really need to sell, or are you some brand like Balenciaga, right, who pretty much don't care about sales? They want to bring attention. They want to stand out.
They want people to stop.
They want people stop and look at it. Yeah, exactly. So,
Cool.
and the last part, again, you guys talked about eyes a little bit, and not a little bit. We had a whole episode about eyes. But again, eyes in photography also very, very important, right? What do you translate with your eyes? How you position your eyes? You translate your energy. But also very interesting in a product photography, right? Or photography when you're like trying to sell something like a piece of clothing, a little object, something, but you have models in frame. Generally, you try to make them not look at the camera, so not to make eye contact with the viewer,
Okay.
because otherwise, when we see eyes, we're naturally drawn to the eyes. So like if, let's say, I'm trying to sell t-shirt, right, but the model is staring like at the camera, people are not going to look at the t-shirt, they're going to look at the model.
Yeah.
But if model is like looking somewhere away and she's not that important, but t-shirt is important. So we're highlighting also the object with, looking or not looking at the camera, or looking past the camera, or looking at somebody else, but like not making the eye contact.
So you can control the focus by either having, if it's a personal brand where you're focusing on the person, they can look in the camera.
Again, yeah.
But if it's a fashion brand or a product brand of some sort where you need attention to go to the product, they're not allowed to look at the camera.
Yeah, absolutely. So it all depends what are you selling? Are you selling a person? Are you selling a product? A feel maybe you're selling, or something else. Again, you're tweaking and twisting all these rules. Kind of they exist for you to kind of know the guidelines, but it's up to you how to use them, how to break them, how to manipulate the viewer.
I really like the idea of selling feelings.
Yeah.
You're not selling a product, you're selling feelings. Because this, again, ties back to one of our previous episodes where you mentioned something about like, don't focus so much on the features, focus on the benefits. Like you gave an example, like if you're selling like a TV, you're not selling it's 4 HDMI ports or it's 4K. You're selling the idea like, oh my God, everyone wants to come over because you have a big screen TV now and watch sports with you. So now you're popular, right?
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
It's like each brand builds a different strategy, right? For them, like either they're selling a feeling. Like for example, the most popular I think is Red Bull, right? For example, I think.
Oh, that's a great one.
Yeah.
Tell us about that.
Yeah. So for example, in their Instagram or like their pages, they do not have a single picture of a product.
That's very true.
There is no
you're
product.
Right. You're right.
They have all this like crazy people who are inventing like machines, competing in like different games. I think, right? Things like that.
Jumping out of airplanes,
Yeah.
parkour.
Adrenaline rush kind of feeling.
Yeah.
You're selling that.
Yeah. They're selling the feeling, but also they have this product. You might buy it if you want.
Yeah.
Kind of that idea. So every brand is different. They build it differently. And for example, my job as a photographer or videographer or somebody visual, right, is to understand the brand, understand what they want, and tweak everything and make everything look like their identity.
To match that mood, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, the mood, the emotions of the brand.
Yeah, absolutely.
That's fantastic.
Yeah, because from the glamour episode, branding, right, is essentially the accessing displaced meaning. So the fact that an object can be a totem and basically be surrounded by meaning.
Yeah.
That by just interacting or carrying or wearing the object, you access this feeling. And the way that's built is by thousands and thousands of videos and photographs related to that brand coming out, generating that feeling to the point that at some point in the future, 6 months from now, all of a sudden, whenever you see that symbol, you have, for Red Bull's case, you have this feeling of adventure. I'm ready to jump out of an airplane. I'm ready to do a crazy BMX ride down the mountain.
Yeah.
And it's the fact that thousands of images and thousands of videos have now been associated with this logo.
Yeah.
and those images had a general direction of a particular mood.
That is so important to branding. But again, I think that has to start from the top level, right? If you're a company, you need to be able to articulate what kind of emotions, right, you want to actually communicate in your advertising or your brand or your message.
Yeah, absolutely.
Do the companies that you work for, do they have something like that where they give it to you, like, this is our brand and we want you to do this? Or do you have to just make it up?
Ideally, it depends who you work with, right? There's companies who are like on top of their thing, right? And they have like the brand book. They send you the brand book. They have everything. Like, we use this colors. We don't use this colors. We use this type of model. We don't use this type of model. Like, they have all the rules. You kind of read through. You see it visual. They like fonts we use. Everything, right? Or there's brands who are like, oh, we want to look cool. And it's just like, you figure it out.
Yeah. But by the way, in case viewers don't know, the brand book, or the brand Bible, do you know about these?
Well, I know that
Roughly.
people have like manuscripts. They make
basically,
manuscripts.
it's a book that kind of captures all the elements of the brand, whether it's typography, logo, where logos can go, what colors are being used.
Yeah.
I remember one of my favorite ones, and I don't know if it's still the same, but the Spotify brand book, and you can track it down online somewhere. Probably, and they have it's a great example of what a brand book should look like.
Wow!
Because it tells you, it captures the entire thing, like what every color that's allowed to be used in anything that Spotify touches is.
Wow!
Where the logo is allowed to be used and where it's not allowed to be used. What mood and all that stuff like that. And so, great clients, professional clients, companies have sort of become more mature. Generally, if you don't have a brand book yet or brand Bible. Start working on it, start putting it together, and over time tweaking it and refining it.
Yeah, it is very helpful, again, for me as a photographer, videographer. I'm so happy when people are like sending me the instructions. It's so much easier. It's so nice. You know exactly what you're doing. And again, it doesn't mean you can't break these rules at all, but you have at least the guidelines, right? Versus sometimes, like, for example, recently I had a shoot, right? People would hire me like the day before, and they're just like, just come, just give us as many pictures as you can. But you have no context whatsoever, right? You know that you're gonna take pictures of the product, but you don't have for how long, what is the location, what is it, and you just like, but most of the time it happens like this in my world. It's very, very spontaneous, very,
like, work your magic, you figure it out.
Like, you have to take pictures and videos and something at the same time.
Oh my
because people want it all. And again, clients usually, they don't understand what it takes to be this camera person, basically. So they think you just come and you just click the button and that's it, magic happens,
right?
So it's hard, but you have to adjust. You have to find your ways and not stress, not lose yourself in all the stress.
And for people who are like marketers or creative design professionals, your ability to communicate to clients and making them understand, the burden is always on you, right? Because again, as a marketer, you're a communicator. And one of the big kind of understandings and rules in marketing is that if your audience did not understand the message you tried to tell them, it's your fault.
Exactly.
Right? The burden of communication is always on your shoulders. And so getting better at being able to communicate to clients and making them understand what is important, what is valuable as you're heading into a photo shoot or as you're developing an ad campaign. Sometimes it's easy to go into like, oh, they just don't understand. They're like, oh, they're like very, very, unsophisticated in these manners. But it's your job to make them sophisticated in these manners.
No, exactly. That's why, for example, each brand and big company, they usually have this person called art director. I don't know if you guys know. It's not a photographer. It's not a videographer. It's this person who is like on top of the visual, basically representation of the brand, and it's the person who hires photographers and videographers, and they work under him. So it's kind of like you're directing these people, you're like managing them, you're telling them what are the frames, but then they do the work. So it's basically not a photographer, it's just a visual person that's on top of everything.
That's crazy how many layers there are in the creative kind of field, whether it's film or marketing, advertising. Like just having a guy is going to be like, okay, this is how it's going to look. Like, I don't even care about the story or like the script or the brand or the product we're selling. You need to make sure you follow these guidelines. my vision for this.
Kind of, or again, yeah, you create your vision as art director, right? You create your vision, and then you're looking like, okay, this photographer does this style of pictures. This photographer does this. Like, what is aligning with my idea of what I want for this campaign, right? And then you find this person, and then at the same time, you find like a wardrobe stylist who like works in the same kind of idea way that you do, and like all this like kind of like branches go.
Yeah.
Probably the most important aspect of what an art director does is they can let the photographers and videographers and designers like run free.
Yeah.
But their most important thing is to keep them from going completely off the cliff. Right. And that's kind of what a brand Bible is trying to do, is trying to create these things. Like, this is what we don't do. Right. You could be creative and fun within the context, but we we don't use this kind of imagery. We don't use these colors. We don't use, sans serif fonts, whatever it is, right? And so oftentimes I think our director is giving a direction, but mostly they're just trying to keep the creative people on
the track.
on track.
Absolutely.
On a short leash.
That's true. Anyway, moving on to the camera work, because this is like, it's my favorite topic. I really like, because there's so many ways you can create feelings and emotions and like make people feel whatever they feel, right, with just the camera positioning or movement.
Really? Just like, for example, like panning, a pan shot. Just the camera itself.
Just the camera itself. Like, no matter what's in frame, you can make people feel different things. But I want to start with the basics a little bit, okay? So, like, it's important. I know every photographer, videographer knows it. It's the basics we start. But for marketing people, I think it's also important to understand this kind of rules. So there is this golden rule exists. It's called golden ratio. I don't know. Do you guys know more or less? Yeah, because you guys work with that.
I've heard of it.
Yeah. Again, it's very important. So kind of to understand. So golden ratio is basically you have 4 lines, 2 vertical, 2 horizontal in your frame. Sorry. And the most important thing usually needs to be in the place where these lines are crossing. All right. So this is where naturally human eye is looking. So like, again, when you're taking picture of something or video, you need to keep in mind that this is 4 dots that the human eye is going to be looking first and paying attention to it. So this is important. This is interesting in terms of composition.
Yeah. So like, we also always call it like the rule of thirds, right?
Yeah, rule of thirds. Yeah.
Right. So essentially you're dividing it up into thirds, right?
Yeah.
Both ways, and it creates these 4 dots.
Yes.
And
that are usually the great composition-wise.
Those are where you want to put the most important thing.
Yes, organically. Or you don't. Again, depends what you're trying to say, right? Or you're trying to mess with the brain, mess with the person, like make it completely out of composition, which draws attention to itself as well. Again, then there is the rule of golden spiral. I don't know if you heard about it. The spiral, it basically looks like a snail shell, right? And it mimics how naturally human eye perceives the image. So kind of in a way. So again, it makes you position like, for example, less important object, a little more important object, and the most important object in the frame. And it's kind of like how eye is following the image.
Oh, so in a spiral like this.
Yeah.
So from least important to the most important.
Yeah.
And that probably also follows the golden ratio too.
Yes, it kind of follows the golden ratio as well. So it's like, it's how human eye perceives the image and video or
so that'd be kind of like, maybe like if you're looking down one of those old school staircases from the top or from the bottom. Yeah. Right. And so you're saying basically where your eye is being led to as you're going up or down the staircase, the most important thing would be in the center of the center as it's coiling. Yes. Yes. Right. And the least important things would be farther out.
I'm thinking like composition, right? Even if you're like a nature photographer. It's really hard. It's not as easy as it looks.
It is hard.
Because it's like, oh, it's just a picture of a mountain. Anyone can take a picture of a mountain. But how do you make it interesting? Yeah. Well, you can maybe you have a tree line that kind of goes around that spiral where you have the mountain peak being right at that center point. Yeah. So that's a good way to like kind of.
Absolutely. In nature, a lot of, again, it's one of the things that works a lot. It's lines. So basically creating this horizontal, vertical, like some sort of lines, that lead you to the object. So like even if you're taking a picture of the mountain and if you have like the tree coming like kind of up.
Or like a road.
It visually leads you to the most important thing, right? It's a very interesting thing. I don't know if you guys know, there was this trend, follow me, the pictures. Follow me too. And like the couples usually did that, and they would take a picture like of a girl holding a guy's hand, a guy taking a picture, going to a travel destination. I don't know if you guys saw these pictures.
I haven't. No.
But it was like a big trend.
So it's like when you take a picture, right?
Yeah.
And the person taking the picture has their hand out.
Yeah.
And then the subject of the photo would be like pulling their hand.
Yeah, and kind of going forward.
So it's almost like a point of view, a POV. And you're being pulled along towards whatever the thing is by the I guess the model in the shot.
Yeah, and it was very popular with the travel destinations specifically. And again, this kind of idea, it creates the line of these hands pointing towards that destination, the important thing. So it's kind of like guides you to the...
And you don't want it perfectly centered. You want it kind of like off a little bit.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Yeah, that's
and you're
really
you're also being pulled along into it.
Yeah.
Right? Because it's like a point of view, right? So it's as if you're there potentially.
Yeah.
By the fact that a hand is coming out.
Yeah, again.
And it could very well be your hand.
Right.
Absolutely. Yeah. So this is like all those ways of making people think, even though if they don't think about it, but subconsciously they get this message. And this is what is important. This is what is cool. Because, also important thing is symmetry. I don't know. Symmetry is usually very pleasing to human eye. So we generally drawn to the symmetrical images, and like something is symmetrical, it's like, oh, it's nice. It looks good. It's nice. But also using symmetry in terms of, I'm sure you guys saw these pictures a lot in the advertising. It's like everything is symmetrical and one thing is like a little off, and it draws your attention there. It really bothers you, but at the same time, it draws your attention to it. So it's interesting also technique, right, to drawing the attention to breaking this perfect world by placing something.
I see a lot of viral videos of, like, for example, there's a piece of cake or a pizza and then they slice it horizontally instead of like the right way. And it's like, it just bothers you because you're not cutting it symmetrically, but it's intentional. It's like, oh my God, but you have to watch it. It's like,
you have to watch
your
it.
attention.
It bothers you. And it gets your attention, which is like great trick, right? You want to get as much attention as you want. So right now let's talk about camera angles. Again, we talked about composition a little bit. Camera angles. Again, placing your camera relatively to the object. Right, so there's different techniques you can do. Most important is high angle and low angle.
Okay.
Again, seems not important, right? Whatever, where you place your camera, it doesn't really matter. But if you think about it, for example, low camera angle on a person makes this person bigger in frame, more powerful, more scary. So, for example, if we talk about movies, right, using it in movies, it's, for example, 300, right? King Leonidas. He's always shot from below.
That's right.
Yeah,
you're right.
He looks big, he looks scary, he always looks down on you. So again, in marketing and selling stuff, if you want somebody to be like this figure that we look up to, right, you just make angle lower, right? And you make them bigger. But at the same time, if you're trying to sell a person and you're making this angle lower, but like, let's say he has a second chin or something, right? It's not working.
It's like the selfie you take down here. You go here.
Yeah.
Not here.
So again, it really depends what you're trying to say, what you're trying to do. At the same time, the higher angle, right, makes an object smaller, makes him like tiny, looking up, a little bit more scared. Let's think about the Dobby. Dobby is always shot from high angle, right?
Dobby from Harry Potter.
Yeah, from Harry Potter, the elf, right? Because everybody looks down on him. It also translates the energy that he's a servant. He's always looking up to you. So this is how you use camera angles to kind of manipulate.
Got it.
Also the perception.
That's cool.
And then there is also an interesting thing that I really like. It's called Dutch angle.
Okay.
I don't know if you guys heard of it.
No.
I mean, Gene probably heard of it, but basically Dutch angle is when you have the shot and you tilt your camera like this or like this or like just not straight, right?
Tilted.
Yeah, tilted basically. And again, it bothers the viewer because like something like horizontal lines are not horizontal. Everything's like off. And for example, this angle is used a lot in Inception, right? When they have all these dream sequences, all this like the world is shaken. You don't know what's happening. It's really bothering you.
Yeah.
Everything's bothering you. So this Dutch angle is also used in in a video and photo to kind of like to bother you, to let you know that something is off.
Something's out of balance.
Yeah, something's out
unstable.
of balance. Yes.
Oh, cool.
Interesting.
Absolutely. Yeah. Or you can translate the movement with it as well. Like if you're filming, like if you want to film like you're in a car or in a ship or like something, right? You also use this framings. So again, I said a million times, depends what you're trying to say, right?
One of the things about the low angle that I've learned, and I guess most guys don't know this because they don't think about these things, but I think every girl knows this, is the low angle is so important for making the legs longer.
Yeah.
Oh, really?
Yeah. And so just a pro tip for boyfriends out there who are taking pictures of their girlfriends or something, keep the camera phone lower.
Oh, so their legs are longer?
So the legs end up being longer.
Well, it's also because it works with a camera distortion a little bit. It's not only because it's lower angle, but it's also distortion. The closer you're to the camera, the more distorted you are.
Oh, okay.
So it's also kind of distort the image and make it
with the lens.
Yeah.
Okay.
Oh, interesting.
That's also the tricks, the little tricks and things. Yeah. But it's hard to figure out because again, it makes your legs look longer, right? Let's say this technique, but it also makes your face look weird.
Oh, really
so you have to figure out the ways, like what is the...
I've heard there's this other thing that people do for their headshots, for like actors and stuff like that, where it's really weird if you see it from the side, but they stick out their neck like this to accentuate their jaw.
Yeah.
And if you're shooting more or less straight on, it defines your jaw. Right, it looks weird if somebody's standing in the room from the side, but doing this exaggerated jaw thing is one of the ways I think people get around the fact that most of the time our jawlines for normal average human beings are not stellar. You know,
that's true,
we're not Brad Pitts, or whatever, or Timothy Chalamet's of the world, right? So, but like this exaggerated, like sticking your neck out, getting closer to the camera helps create this jawline, and then was it Tara Banks?
Oh, yeah. Yeah, Tara Banks, she was doing all this speech, and she was one of the coaches on like America's Next Top Model and stuff. And she has this famous speech where she explains the kind of neck work. So how you can like translate your neck, and it's important to have a neck in a picture because otherwise you look like a monster basically without a neck. And there's a couple techniques. There's like a horse, a giraffe, and an owl. I think, but it's mostly for like models and modeling jobs and like selling yourself as a model. But basically, you prolongate your neck, right? So you're a giraffe.
So the giraffe is when you stick your chin up like this.
Yeah. Your chin up and your giraffe, and then if you need to look to the side, you can also kind of make an owl, right? Which you cover this side of your neck, but at the same time you create the long line over here off your neck, right? And I think there was a horse. It's the one you talked about. It's kind of moving forward. Yeah.
And so in a lot of photos, and people who are not necessarily models, but they want to figure out why models tend to look better in their photos, is because they know these tricks. And again, what was it? Tyra Banks?
Tyra Banks.
Tyra Banks.
Yeah.
No, she did an entire thing about how important
the neck is.
The neck is.
But also let's not forget about Photoshop.
Well,
like,
the Photoshop,
but
you have a starting point, right? Is the fact that like being aware of what your neck is doing, in terms of how good you look on a photo, and using this giraffe or this turning owl thing.
Well, now our audience knows what a giraffe,
owl and a horse
is.
Yeah.
And when they're posing.
And there's a bunch of techniques like that for like little secrets for like hand movements, how you need to place your hand on your hip, like this or like this, which makes it look like more pleasing. But again, it's more for models and girls and stuff, so it's not on our today's topic that much.
Okay. Well, I think it's still fascinating. I think it's all part of it.
You know?
No, it is definitely interesting.
All right, so moving on. Next part.
Okay. All right, next part. I wanted to talk about creating the depths and the feeling of the depths, right, in the picture again, because we talked. It's a two-dimensional thing. The picture, so
depth. You're like how deep.
Yeah, like how deep, how the viewer perceives it as just something real instead of something just fake.
Okay.
If we can talk about it. So like if you have a person on a background is a white wall, right? This picture is not that interesting.
Flat.
It's flat, right? But if you start adding objects behind and they're kind of like a little blurry and like the horizontal lines and perspective goes somewhere far, it creates more realistic image of the space, of the feeling that this is real.
And three-dimensional.
And three-dimensional. Exactly. At the same time, again, adding objects to your thing, it's not always a bad thing, because again, you as somebody who's trying to sell, let's say, product, right? You don't want any other objects in your frame usually, right? Because like this is important, everything else is not important. But sometimes it is. Because with adding objects, you're adding this feeling, the space, the depths, but you can also manipulate the viewer in a way. I like to do it a lot in my work, is adding foreground. So like just something like a little tree on a foreground or something. But immediately it creates the feeling that you are there, that this is space and the viewer is there.
Oh, I see.
All right.
That makes a lot of sense. Yeah.
Is that like makes you feel like you're like hiding behind the tree?
You are looking, that there's something here, but you're looking, because usually if you think as a human being, right, you look straight, right, but there's a lot of objects on your way, but you kind of ignoring them, right, when you look at something. But again, this creates the feeling that this is real, this is how you perceive the world.
And you're like looking from around this object at something.
Yes. So I really like this technique. It's used a lot in, like, again, as we said, kind of looking at somebody or like sneaking in, right? So in the movies, right, like for example, there's frames that are like shot from a doorway, right, or something. It gives you the feeling that you are there, that you are looking at these people. You're not looking at the screen. You are there. You're looking at the people. You're spying. Yeah, exactly. So
yeah, I'm gonna watch movies now and just look out for depth.
No,
in
absolutely.
Scenes. Because again, so much thought is put into movies. Like no scene doesn't just happen, right? It's all thought out, planned, and there's people setting up everything from the lighting to the props to where they're the location and down to the finest little details, right?
I know, figure out the color of like the curtains to translate some idea to,
like, to translate like emotions or convey feelings, or like a lot of movies have even like just smoke. They have smoke machines in a lot of scenes, and you don't even realize it, but it's just to accentuate the lighting through like
to
a
accentuate
window.
Lighting to create this kind of like moody
like
environment.
Dustiness,
you're not even supposed to see it.
Yeah, you're not.
Yeah,
but it's all intentional. And again, this is the point of this podcast and this episode is you need to create creatives with intent, right? To convey the specific feelings that you're selling for your brand. And you have to know the craft, just like how film directors and art directors and cinematographers, they are well versed in this craft, and they went to school and they studied a lot of hours. I mean, I don't know how many hours you've studied, but you've probably studied a lot.
Yeah, a lot of hours studying all of it, and you don't even realize. And first you think it's not important because regular people, they don't pay attention to it, they don't know, but subconsciously they know.
Yeah, so and like, that's so powerful.
Yeah, exactly. It works in a way. It's like that you can again manipulate people. You can make them be scared,
right?
Or you can make them happy just with one framing.
Yeah, just tilting a camera, at a certain angle, posing a person directly, as opposed to the side, adding more depth, using the golden ratio to kind of lead them towards a certain villain or a hero.
Making
like
them know what is important.
Yeah, everything just ties in, and once you have that concept and understanding. It's like then you become an actual artist, right?
No, absolutely. And again, I like to refer to it as magic. It's creating magic, right? Because a lot of people say, "Oh, it's all fake. Like all the movies are fake." It's not fake. It's magic.
It's magic. I love it.
I love it. And again, if we're going back to depths, one of the techniques I like a lot, and it's very interestingly used, is not putting, like we talked about, putting objects on the foreground, but putting some action on the background.
Oh.
And it's very interesting. It's recent. I watched this TV show on Netflix. It's called Brother's Son.
Okay.
I don't know if you've seen it, guys.
No.
But basically what happens there is some action is happening on a foreground where the focus is, right? For example, in that scene, it's like cookies are baking, right? And you're looking at the cookies, but then on a background through the window, there's a fight scene happening. Like, and there's this two actions happening, and it's like it plays very interesting kind of emotional game with you that there's this calm, beautiful moment happening, like this cookies are baking, that like the dough is rising and something, but in the background there's like guys smashing each other and like blood is flowing and kind of like creating these two different feelings in one frame, which is a very cool technique. I love when people use it. And again, I don't know how much you can use it in advertising, but I'm sure you can create.
Well, you can use it in viral like videos now on
probably,
TikTok. Like just create some new TikTok trend.
Yeah, again, it's kind of combining two things that are opposite. I think it's a very interesting technique. Again, cookies and fight, or like, I don't know, what else can you do? Like a grandma, doing something really quietly on a kitchen.
Knitting while there's a gun, like a war going on in the back, through her window, something.
And the thing you were talking about, having something in the foreground to create that feeling of spying, I think is really important. Because if you think about like, I even in my mind imagine like you have a wall, like maybe with like family photographs, right? And then you're looking around the wall deeper into the house, and then you have like people sitting around a table having a very serious conversation.
Yeah.
Right. So you have like, again, you get the sense like you're looking into somebody's life.
Yeah. Absolutely.
And you could use like the wall of the family photographs to establish maybe like this is like a calm family.
Yeah.
Right. But then I don't know, maybe they're sitting at the table because they're having a very serious conversation about the teenager's relationship to drugs.
No, absolutely.
Or something, right? Like it's now become like, have this conversation with your child today, like so you can create this like depth into space of like you're looking into, you're spying.
I see what
voyeuristic.
You're saying. You could do it for like like some sort of a PSA, like don't do drugs, kids, or something.
Or something like you have the ability to again create the sense of like you're looking into somebody's life by just putting something in the foreground around which you're looking, or like just looking at something through a doorway or through a window. Immediately makes you feel like a voyeur, like somebody who's spying on somebody else's life.
Now you're thinking like an artist, right?
Or interesting, interesting frame. One of my favorites. Sorry, I interrupted. It's The Graduate. I don't know if you guys saw this movie.
The Graduate. Yeah.
It was Mrs. Robinson, and there's this famous frame through her leg.
Yeah.
When she's sitting there, her leg is like this, and we're looking through her leg.
Hey, Ms. Robinson, are you trying to seduce me? Is that the one?
Yeah, that's the one.
Yeah, exactly. And it's just like it gives you this kind of depth and like understanding that you kind of like there.
That's a perfect example. That movie is full of like amazing imagery, like the him sitting on the bus with the bride, they run away, like. Amazing.
Yeah. Anyway, again, speaking about framing and kind of placing objects, let's talk about something that's called negative space and positive space.
Okay.
It's a very interesting concept, also one of my favorites. Basically, negative space is what is not important, is what is empty in a frame, and positive space is where is your object, subject, or something. It can be like tree, a person, an object, right? This is positive. Everything else is kind of empty, negative. So the good examples of negative space would be the ocean, the desert, the sky. Like, it's kind of empty. It's there. It's still an object, but it's like there's no information there used. And it's also very important because, again, you're drawing attention to positive space by creating a lot of negative space around it.
I see.
So you can have like the product in the foreground with a vast desert. Behind them. Okay.
Yeah, so you kind of create this feeling of this is important, this is where we're all like looking for it, this is it. And for example, positive space, right? It works. It's for example, Jackson Pollock, right? Jackson Pollock, sorry. The painter, right? His paintings are full of objects, so it's all created from positive space. Right? So there's no negative space whatsoever. It's all like object. Oh, everything is important. Right? If we go back, for example, let's say Space Odyssey, the movie. It's filmed in space. It uses a lot of negative space.
Yeah.
So like this little starship in the space. Right? To create kind of the idea of the huge space, of the huge isolation, and how tiny human beings are. So again, it's important using these techniques, again, when you're trying to sell something, right? Because it's interesting. It draws your attention to something or it takes away your attention. Right? So I really like playing with it. And again, if you're trying to, you know, this Finding Waldo thing. I don't know. Yeah.
So
Where's Waldo?
Where's Waldo?
Yeah, where's Waldo,
Yeah.
right? So this is all like positive space. There's a lot of stuff happening, and you're trying to find this little thing. And usually in advertising, that probably wouldn't work unless you're intentionally
Creating like a Where's
creating-
Waldo type of.
Yeah.
exactly.
I Spy.
That's a great example. Don't
Yeah.
create a Where's Waldo in your advertising. Don't have your audience trying to find where your product is in your advertising.
So is it like the density of details basically? Like
I don't know if it's density of the details, but it's basically making sure that this is important. You're letting everybody know this is important. This is what we're looking at. Everything else is just a space.
could you like give an example of like maybe like in something you've worked on where you've used negative space?
Okay. For example, negative space. This is also a very interesting technique. Negative space used a lot in horror films. Because, again, depending where you give this negative space, the viewer subconsciously, they want to fill it in. So if you, for example, you have a character, right, and you have a lot of negative space behind him, and there's tense music playing, and there's like very dark, your brain thinks something's gonna show up there. Something's gonna be there because like it's empty space. It doesn't make sense. Something's gonna show up.
So
up
you're
there.
basically saying like if you have a person and their front is closer to the edge of the
Yeah,
frame,
and you have a lot of space behind, right? You see the whole room behind.
like blackness
them,
or something, right?
right?
I just
something.
think about Blair Witch Project. That
Yeah,
movie.
or like the Hereditary. I don't know if you see Hereditary. It's a great movie.
No.
They use it a lot. Basically, it's a horror film, but they don't have any jump scares.
Oh.
They just have this like little. So you look at the frame, and they hold frame for like a minute, right? And the person just does something, and darkness behind. But the longer you look, you start noticing that there's something in that dark, and it's very creepy, and it just stays there. It's not jumping. It's not moving. It's just there.
I'm terrified already.
I remember that because I was in the theater, and it's like Hereditary is like basically it's a film. It's making a horror film, but like it's also playing with the tropes.
Yeah.
And I know exactly the scene you're talking about is where like he like kind of wakes up, right?
Yeah.
And he's just sitting in a room, and it's blackness. And what is happening is that your eye naturally goes to the
Yeah, because you get
foreground,
bored
the
because nothing
object,
happens in the frame.
and
you
it's
get
holding the
bored.
shot, and
Yeah.
and you can sort of as you're sitting in the movie theater, you can hear as people find it because you start hearing gasps like all of a sudden like it's holding a shot for like a minute. All of a sudden you're bored and you're looking around, and then you start hearing gasps in the theater.
That is scary.
And then eventually you start hearing people laughing because they get the joke.
Yeah.
They get the fact that like the director is messing with the audience and is doing this on
Yeah.
purpose.
Yeah.
Because he knows that it's going to take time for everyone to get bored and start having their eyes wander
Exactly.
into the negative space and eventually find it. And you're like, oh,
Yeah.
That's an interesting play on having the negative space turn into a positive space.
Absolutely,
Flipping the
yeah.
coin.
And again, it's you as a manipulator. You can either make something pop up there or not, right? And people would expect it, but it's not happening, and it starts bothering them. And something is off about this framing. Something is off. Like, what is happening? They start wondering what's going to happen. And again, you as a director or a videographer, you play with people's minds in this way, right?
because they want to fill the negative space. They want
Your
something to
brain
be there.
wants to, your brain
And so
naturally
it creates
wants
tension
yes.
when you deprive them of
yeah.
having something enter that negative space.
Yeah, but it's also important because this concept works with a back negative space, if it makes sense. So like if a person looks this way, right, and there's no space in front of them, but a lot of space behind them. At the same time, when we shift this, right, and there is like no space behind you, but a lot of space in front of you, it creates a different feeling. It's not tension, it's more relaxed. So this person has a lot of space to explore things. They're sure, they're like very confident. They're speaking to somebody and they're big in this frame instead of having this backspace.
Maybe
It's
they're looking into the horizon, adventures in front of them. Again, Marlboro Man or like
Yeah.
Route 66 in front of them. So like your back is all the way against the frame, the edge of the frame, and the world and possibilities
yes.
are endless in front of you with massive negative space
Yes.
before you.
Wow, look at you, Gene. Become a cinematographer. This episode has transformed you. It's unleash your creative juices.
into the
I love
creative
it.
juices. Absolutely. And there's another TV show on Netflix. It's pretty old. It's called Mr. Robot. I don't know if you guys heard or seen anything about it. Basically, what they did, the whole TV show, they filmed was a very, very weird framing.
Oh, I know what you're talking about. Yeah.
You know
yeah.
it? So basically,
Yeah.
what they do is they cut the head, right, like this, of a person, and there's a lot of space like up front. I don't know, how do you say?
Up above the head?
Up above the head, and then on the sides, right? And the head is just in a corner. And it's very weird, and it's not supposed to be like this, but they made a thing out of it. Again, there's no rules, right?
Yeah.
You can do whatever you want as long as you know what you're doing, you
Yeah,
know?
yeah.
So it's cool because, again, it manipulates, it bothers you. So the whole TV show is like, it has like this kind of like, you watch it, but you're like very unpleased or like
uncomfortable.
uncomfortable.
Discomfort.
Yeah, again, do you want to feel the viewer comfortable or uncomfortable? Up to you. Okay, wrapping up a little bit, I wanted to talk about camera movements.
Sure.
It's the last thing.
Okay,
Yeah.
okay.
Very important. There's tons of camera movements that exist, right? But I'm going to talk about my kind of favorite ones. And one of the most important techniques is zoom in, zoom out. It sounds pretty basic, right? But again, it creates the feeling. Like if you imagine Leonardo DiCaprio playing in one of the movies, right? And giving this monologue and camera slowly zooming towards him. You kind of entering his space. You're more into him. You're more, feeling what he's feeling, understanding. At the same time, when you're zooming out, right? You kind of revealing what else is around the person, right? And this is actually cool. I really like this kind of reveal shots. Again, you can use it with zoom out or with camera pan or, again, using a foreground to reveal. So, like, let's say somebody's like crying, right? And you just see their face crying, but the camera slowly zooms out, right? And you can reveal like very weird things, like, right? For example, let's say there's a woman crying, camera moving, there's children running around, and you're like, okay, what's happening? You're getting more context. It zooms out more, but there's like, I don't know, the bars, so they're in a prison or something. And the more you zoom out, the more context you give to the viewer what is happening.
Right.
So again, you play with a person in this way.
Or vice versa, zooming in too.
Yeah, or zooming in again. Yeah, you're kind of zooming in more important into the emotion, into the face, into the object. If you're doing the object, right? It's very cool techniques. Another very interesting thing that is not commonly used now, but it's very interesting. It's called Hitchcock zoom. I don't know if you guys heard.
Is that the one where you change the aperture and your dolly?
Not aperture, the zoom.
Okay, the zoom.
So you basically, physically you move camera back, but you zoom in on your lens or vice versa. You move camera forward and you zoom out, which creates this vertigo effect, if it makes sense, right? It kind of collapses the background with a person or distances them in a frame and creates this interesting, weird, I don't know, framing feeling.
I've seen music videos do this too. They use that
I guess
effect.
they use it a lot in music videos and stuff because it's very not natural and kind of unnecessary.
It looks weird.
It
You
looks
see
weird,
yeah.
but again, if you want your viewer feel weird, right, you would do that. Or like, they probably use it a lot in like moments of realization of something, right? And you're just like, the world collapses behind you or something.
Yeah.
Right.
Like,
So-
oh my God, everything's, that's actually a good method you can do for like a zoom, weird kind of zoom cut if you're making a TikTok video.
Yeah.
I see a lot of people kind of use similar techniques for reaction videos. Like they'll show a clip and then they'll zoom cut to some guy like, hey, this is what I think about this video. Like this guy's crazy.
Yeah,
like you see a lot of creative people using these kind of techniques.
Exactly, because
on
it's
social media.
interesting. It draws attention to itself, right? Because all we do is we're trying to bring attention of people to whatever we want to show them. Because there's so many things around that, our attention jumps to, and it's very hard to create something that's going to stand out, and it becomes harder and harder. So we have to come up with more and more techniques, more and more visual or positioning, or I don't know, interesting, something out of the world, breaking the rules, just to make you look at something that we want you to look at. Again, I'm kind of probably going to stop here somewhere because there's a lot of things we can talk about. There's the whole separate chapter about lightning. Again, how you manipulate everything with lightning. And I love this topic. I can talk for a long time. But
Well, I can tell you're very passionate about this.
I am.
And
I
you
am.
barely scratched the surface because, again, you went to film school. This is your passion. This is something that you've studied, right?
Yeah, absolutely. And I didn't know it was my passion before I kind of discovered it, right? And I'm still learning till this day.
Yeah.
And I'm learning from masters, but I'm also learning from my own experiences. And it's a beautiful, wonderful world, as I said, magical world.
Yeah.
And, it's a very cool. And as a photographer, nowadays you have to also be a videographer, you have to also be a marketer, you have to be a psychologist, you have to be like all these things you have to combine in yourself and kind of have understanding of how everything works.
No, and absolutely. If you're like an influencer now, right, on social media, like you have to do all of these things too, right?
Absolutely. You have to know these things because otherwise you're not going to... I mean, if you're very rich, you probably can hire different people for different tasks. But in reality, right, we all have to be... Because, like, again, as a photographer, I have to create these images, but I also have to sell myself, right? Sell my work. Sometimes I have to physically sell a picture of something, right, as an object. Again, I have to learn all these marketing techniques as well, which I don't really want to know about it, but I have to.
You have to.
Yes.
We all have to at this point.
Recently, I had to build a website and so so you have to learn all these things, even though you're specializing in something one, but it's all collapsing together.
No, it's everything's coming together, but that's what makes it wonderful because now,
absolutely,
we can do everything. Yeah. We can self-promote. We can promote other people's products, or we can become popular and famous, viral. We can do all these things now. It's like it's such a magical time now to actually be alive because, before you would need thousands of dollars and like all these equipment. Now you can do it on your phone.
Yeah.
With using free apps, using like CapCut or something. It's just something simple.
What it sort of makes me think of is in the sense of like, obviously as kids, when we go through school, we go through English classes. We learn the language, grammar, that kind of thing. And I wouldn't be surprised that in a couple of years from now, right, people would be learning this visual language as part of the curriculum in school, right?
Yeah.
Because historically, right, it was difficult to potentially write a book, right? Now essentially anybody can write a book because everybody has a word processor on their computer, right?
Yeah.
And now we're heading in this direction where the similar thing is happening
to the visual
visual and audio world, right? Where it's the democratization of these things where now anybody can do it.
I love it.
Today, people are still writing amazing books. There are still authors who are able to create genius work, even though every single human being theoretically now has the ability to sit down and write a book on a word processor.
Yeah.
And the fact that all these mediums are opening up to everybody, video and audio, and the ability to create all these social media content, stuff like that.
Yeah.
It just now means that people are going to have to develop this visual language, be able to understand it better. And that there's definitely going to be people who are going to be like genius writers in this language.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
And there's a lower barrier to entry for people to come into this space.
There's definitely much more competition now. But still, as long as you're good, as you know what you're doing, you know what your passion is, I believe you can stand out and make a living. Because again, there's a lot of competition, but there's also a lot of people who actually need your services, right? It also grows because everybody needs a visual thing now because everything, whatever you sell, you need to show now, right? Because you used to sell things by maybe like talking about them, right? Or like just explaining them. But right now people are so spoiled that they need to see it, they need to touch it, they need to see it in a 3D and so there's a lot of requests for the market, right? But also a lot of people on the market who create things as influencers, right? You go to film school, you learn, you buy expensive the cameras and stuff, and then there's somebody with iPhone and just makes million views, killing it, and you're just like, what am I doing here?
I know, what am I doing in my life?
Yeah, exactly.
Well, I think that wraps it up. Again, thank you, Maryna, for joining us.
Sure, absolutely. Thank you for having me.
And distilling your many years of knowledge into this 1 hour podcast episode. Again, distilling the magic is part of what we do here at Manipulation Games. And so we hope you enjoyed it. We hope you enjoyed and learned a lot about, communication through the visual medium. And thank you, Gene, again, as usual.
Of course.
You can find us on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, Amazon Music. You can also watch us on YouTube. And keep those Bobby Lee comments coming. I love it. So until next time, see you guys. Peace. Bye.